Welcome to Gray Matters, the podcast for women who are done with the one-size-fits-all health advice and ready for real, honest conversations about hormones, fitness, and feeling like themselves again. I'm your host, Haley Pindle, here with my amazing co-host, the Dr. Emily Marshall, here to help you guys in the best way possible. So let's get into what matters.
Woohoo! Okay, here's the deal. I am so pumped to hear all about your trip and all the fun nitty-gritty stuff. So do tell.
Where do I even start? Okay, so from the last episode, if you didn't know, I went to Tofino, which is a little surfer dude town on Vancouver Island for my bachelorette trip, and it was the best thing ever. I left there pretty I was kind of stressed out. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel really numb, and that genuinely healed my soul to the best of its ability. We left on Friday morning, and it was a very long trip there. It's usually around like 5 to 7 hours with the ferry and the driving, and we had check-in at 5, so we just kind of took our sweet time. We went to the goats on the roof. Yeah, so we just kind of took our sweet time getting there, and then we got there, went for a little walk as a group. There's about 7 of us. Went to get some adult juice and some pizza for dinner. And it was the funniest thing because we were walking around that first night and my cousin was like, oh, you know what? My period cramps are so bad. I got to go back. And then one of my good friends was like, oh yeah, we buddy system. Like I got to go with her. So they went back to the house. And then we were in a bookstore and my best friend was like, hey guys, I don't know how to tell you this, but I got a shit real bad. And some guy was right beside her. The other girl went back with her too. And it was just 3 of us left. So it was me, my friend Milen, and then her friend Eve. Milen is getting married the day before me. So we had this combined bachelorette together. So it was me and her as the brides. And then
Yes, I think I saw a picture of that.
yeah. Yeah.
Figured. Okay.
Yeah.
Exciting.
So it was funny because we were like, we're getting married to each other. We played that up the whole time. And then we went back to the house and they had all this like setup done. And it was just the funniest decorations and games. Margaritas were made and it was a great surprise. It was just the best. I felt so loved and cared for. And we had a really fun first night. And then the second day we all went for massages. So it was more of like a chill day. Tooled around town, went to a farmer's market, got some knickknacks to bring home, and then went out for a really nice dinner where we got 2 rounds of wine for free because the owner was there and he saw that we were having the whole, because we got the sashes, we got the glasses, we got the tiaras, we got everything going on. He's like, rounds for the table. So very grateful for that. And then
That's great.
Yeah, the last day we just kind of packed up and left. Holy, we had a beach day too. It was the best. I just have no words for how grateful I am for my community of women that I absolutely adore. Yeah.
Oh, man, that sounds so refreshing.
It was the best. It was the absolute best and I miss it. And I got to do more girls trip. There is something about being around like your women that we like. My good friend who's also getting married, we were obviously sleeping in the same bed because we had the Master King, and we stayed up till like 2 a.m. with these really in-depth conversations and like really connecting. And oh my god, I feel so much closer to like everyone, it's just my bread and butter. Honestly,
Yeah.
I love deep and depth. So
that is such a gift. And
yeah.
I mean, obviously some of that info stays, bachelorette is, stays there. But of some of the topics that are willing and able to share, I would love to get some insight into like what is going on in women's brains these days.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming, are all of you in your 20s? Is anyone in their 30s?
Late 20s. And then the only one was my cousin. She's early 20s, which was really fun to have that contrast. But a big topic was actually children. And of course, like I'm getting to know these women and, well, like her friends essentially. And of course, I'm asking, like, are you planning to have a family? Are you excited for kids and all of that? And there's a lot of like teeter-tottering between it, which I think is very interesting because I've always been very solidified in my choice of like, yes, I've always wanted to have kids. I've always wanted to bring children, regardless of like world circumstances. I think everything can be figured out. And I feel like even like my parents before we're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can bring kids into the world of phones and all this. And like, here we are, we're doing fine. Right. So I feel like it'd be the exact same way. But yeah, that was a big topic of women not really wanting to have kids or really debating it and leaning very heavily on the no side, which I found very interesting. I know your answer to that, but yeah, I think the fear mongering is a big one. And I'd like to get into also like the pregnancy post HA a little bit later, but essentially, like, what are your thoughts on all of this? I think it's more so for younger women being a bit on the fence about it, maybe world issues, maybe like just not willing to sacrifice, so on and so forth. But your thoughts?
Yeah. Do you sense that there's a lot of fear then?
I sense fear of finances and also like how the world is, which I kind of have my own opinion on. I think we know too much about the world, and therefore we're making decisions based on what's happening in places we like never would have known without social media. Yeah, I think that there's more fear mongering than anything. And like, of course, it's going to be hard, but I think a lot of people only focus on what they're giving up and how hard it is too,
Yeah.
rather than the blessing that it is and what you get out of it too.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like there's an aspect of looking at short-term gains, short-term pain, long-term gain, having that long-term mindset. It's like anything, right? You're making decisions today that can affect your future. And you're not, when you're thinking about when you're coming through your 20s, and really lots of times all you're thinking about is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not always. Like sometimes, you might have something external that requires a lot of your time, effort, and energy. If you have a parent that gets ill or in an accident and you have to then start providing care for them at a younger age. But often that doesn't happen until, if it's more of a natural aging process, you get people who are my age and older that start needing to like care for elderly parents or that sort of a deal beyond just having their own children. And so through your 20s, there's a lot of, you've come through high school where you're, aspiring to do some sport at a high level, or, all that matters is I got to get good grades because I got to get into the next level of schooling, or I need to land this career that I've been dreaming about for years. And a lot of it is me oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And so you invest all this time and energy into yourself. And then you get to a point where, even into your late teens, where you're thinking, well, I've invested all this time and energy. How can I give this up? That's one thing, which I think is not a full truth. You're not giving everything up. I think there's a lie twisted in there that's like, well, everything that I've worked for, I need to now give it all up. That is not necessarily the case. Yes, of course, there's going to be sacrifices, but there's an aspect of love that requires a level of sacrifice, suffering, challenge, all of that. And I will challenge you on that is when you grow the most, even though it's uncomfortable, right? So there's a lot of discomfort that can be focused on where just the point of like getting through a pregnancy. What if you're throwing up your whole pregnancy, right? Have a lot of pain during, well, childbirth is painful, but I mean, what if it's a more extreme scenario, more emergency scenario? You could be putting your own life on the line. What if you're scared of the devastating, what if now I want to have this child, and what if I lose this child and that's outside of my control? So there's so many variables that go on in a woman's mind that are high risk. What if I've put my trust in my partner, right? And you've got a man that you thought you knew everything about him, and now you don't. And now that trust is broken, and you were you were giving birth and then having to care for your young newborn. You've got this element of, and my guy isn't holding up his end of the bargain. You know what I mean? So I think there's the direct things in your life that can create fear. Then there's what you said, Haley, which is the greater world issues, more global. We're like, oh yeah, but there's these wars going on. And what if there's a threat to where we live? And there is financial instability because the economy is crazy right now, and whatever, inflation and all this stuff, right? And so I think there's a twofold in the fear. But I would really challenge you to ask yourself if all of those fears are actually true. Because yes, there is a risk, but there's a risk every time that you get in your vehicle and go for a drive that you could get in a car accident. Well, do you still drive your vehicle? I would say for most people, yes, right? And so if you look at it, well, how did you come to the conclusion that you should go ahead and drive your vehicle? Was there enough of a compelling, well, I need to get to work or I really want to go on this trip? Well, I'm going to do it anyways, right? And when you actually start, if you were to make a pros and cons list, or like just start dreaming up what are all the beautiful things that come with children, it's going to start to reveal somewhat of how amazing it is to have those children, for you, for them, for your whole extended family. Like the whole scenario is just absolutely incredible. It's like the most miraculous thing that can occur in life. And part of it is one of those scenarios where you have to lean into good faith from others when they're saying, oh my goodness, my children are the greatest joy that I've ever experienced, the most love that I didn't even know my love could, like that my heart could love this big and this bold, right? And you can't fully experience it until you actually go through it. And until that point, you kind of have to lend your trust to others that are saying, no, this is actually such a beautiful experience.
Absolutely. And I think you brought up a good point of like the why has to be bigger than yourself as well. Because that's always been when I'm thinking back to my own rooted morals of why I want to have children. I was actually meditating on this one day. I don't know why, but I was feeling really sentimental.
Mm-hmm.
And I just envisioned having a really big table at Christmas full of like kids and dogs running around and like cooking in the kitchen. And I just like, that's freaking fires me up. It's more of like, not necessarily legacy, but like, I want to grow old and watch these children become like who they are, whatever that may be. And I think kids can be really fun too, just from my experience of like, toddlers and what they say and how ridiculous they are. And I've always loved their honesty as well. I don't know if I've ever told you this story about the woman in Safeway and her two boys. It was around Christmas time. Did I tell you this story?
You didn't. Do tell.
Okay, I will tell. I was just shopping around in Safeway and there was this mom, obviously shopping for Christmas stuff, stressed out. Her boys were not being awesome. Like they were kind of like, Mom, I want this, blah, 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 running around. And she's like, boys, stop, stop, stop. And they wouldn't stop. And so she was like, okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm done. She whipped out her phone, dialed not even a number, and was like, yeah, hi, Santa. Yeah, you got to take them off the good list. I can't do this. And then they were like, no, wait, Mom, stop, stop. And they were perfect after that. And I'm like, yes, I want to pull that. I want to have that kind of fun in my life.
That's hilarious. That is so funny.
I thought that was so freaking funny. And ever since then, I'm like, yes, I got to do that one day.
That's
But
great.
yeah, I think it
And
has to be.
kids say hilarious things
They
too. Like
do.
some of the things they come up with are just, yeah. I don't even know if I have any in my mind like to think of on the spot, but like in the little moments. And sometimes there are moments when you retell a story and maybe to the person you're telling, they're like, okay, it's not that funny. But in the moment,
Yeah.
because you just are like, oh, whoa, you know this new big word, or you sound like a mini adult, but you're only like 4 years old and it's just hilarious. And then the fun experiences, like last night, just as an example, it was super hot and muggy here. Well, for Peace River, we're cold adapted. But I said, hey guys, let's go outside. We'll take the dog out and we'll put on the sprinkler and we'll use the sprinkler like a volleyball net. Like, so we're playing volleyball. And John and I are both out there, all the kids and the dog, and she's just like running around trying to get the volleyball. Like she's like in the game, the dog. And the kids are like trying to move quicker so the dog doesn't get the ball. But like we're all getting good physical activity. We're getting like just nice sunlight. But then the whole experience is we're just like laughing and giggling and like making silly jokes. And afterward, and we had music going. I'm like, man, this was so fun. It's like a backyard party with kids. But when you allow yourself to be involved, now it's not always like that. There's some days you get home from work and you're like, okay, yeah, you guys go play. They're like, come jump on the trampoline. And you're like, no, I'm just going to sit here and have a glass of water and watch you jump, and then other times you have the energy to join in because kids have boundless energy compared to adults. That's just the way life goes. But all that to say is like those experiences you can have on a daily basis. Like it's not like you have to wait to meet up with your friends on the weekend. Like you've got these built-in fun people in your life. Like it's definitely, it can get loud and chaotic and things can get messy, but it's not lonely, and that's kind of a fun thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to bring up was that I just love this piece of wisdom. It's that love brings forth life. So when you think about like even just a man and a woman who love each other very much, like their child is like the creation and the life that comes forth from their love between one another. And it's like that in all of creation. Like it's like our whole world is like love is what like that's how God designed it. It's like the love is what brings forth creativity and brings forth life. And so that's why all these virtues come with it, like joy and hope and love and faith. And so these are the virtues that counteract the fear and all the opposites, right? That make things seem bleak and hopeless. And I feel like if your reason for not wanting to have children is fear-based, it's really getting sucked into that dark hole of hopelessness. And there's always those two sides. And so how do we counteract that? Well, we actually counteract it with love first. It's the act of love that helps to counteract the fear, which is kind of interesting because I think, you can talk about other things like, well, just be courageous or, just stop being afraid, but it doesn't have the same effect. If you are compelled by love, that's a totally different story, which speaks to what you said with your bigger vision and your why. And for you, you've painted this beautiful picture. Like what you said is like, oh, yeah, that's so beautiful. And that's totally worth suffering for. Like I just went through this with one of my staff members. She was going through a book called The Fred Factor. We go through different books with our staff, and a lot of them are about leadership, ownership, different types of skills, that sort of thing. And they kind of cycle through a different book each month, and we review them. And it really helps with our team culture because it keeps everyone growing and focused. It creates a lot of accountability. And she had written down the word passion, and I was like, well, you remember what the word passion means, right? Because she's like, well, yeah, you have to have a deep why, and you need to be passionate about it. And I was like, yes. A lot of people use that word passionate like, oh, this is something I really want, right? Versus the word passion actually means to suffer for. If you really, really want something, like you have to be willing to suffer for it, which is the same thing when, you have a body composition goal and you're like, I need to essentially suffer through these different workouts to get to my goal, or even with your clients, right? It's the same thing. It's like, I know that my body needs the support. We need to get back to putting calories in my body for period recovery. There is an element of suffering in order to get to that thing that you're hoping for. And so I feel like it's the same thing with kids and
Yeah.
relationships.
Oh yeah, I think it's more of a principle, right, that you learn through life. And even like with business wise, like you guys likely don't do it for the like the business. You know what I mean? It has to be a more ingrained thing of, no, I want to help people. I want to make other people's lives better. I want to impact the world in a different way. And that's how I feel too. Like business is hard. There's a million and one things that go wrong. And you keep showing up the next day because you get those like actually this is a really good segue into what we're talking about. But one of my clients who has been with me for over a year, been through the ringer, like I'm telling you, the ringer with her fertility and like HA and doctors. And she just got a positive pregnancy test this morning.
That's so exciting.
And I have been reflecting all morning on like the grit and the resilience she has shown through this whole thing. And like, if you don't have that really powerful ingrained why, no matter how long the timeline takes, you're just going to turn around and quit, which is why that really deep why is so important, and not to do it for anything other than that.
Totally.
Which, yeah, kind of goes into kids, and there's going to be so much sacrifice and hard times, but there's also going to be an equal amount of reward, right? So just kind of knowing that it is going to be okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, just
Totally.
to kind of get into what we're talking about in terms of fertility post HA, I can talk about this from like my client who just got pregnant. I think this is a great time to be talking about this on the episode because she just got pregnant.
That's so cool.
Yeah, right? Gosh, I have had the best week ever with like my bachelorette and this and amazing news. And it's just a really great week. Anywho, coming out of HA and low energy availability, this is more so for those who have maybe just got their first period, second period, what to look for if you're trying to get pregnant, because there can be some anovulatory cycles, meaning you don't ovulate, but you then have a period. You can also have a low or a short luteal phase, meaning there's low progesterone, more likelihood for a miscarriage. So as your cycle tries to even itself out, there is a time frame where you can optimize pregnancy. So the first few cycles probably are not that. You can, of course, get pregnant on like the first cycle that you get. However, if you're planning it, I would suggest maybe later on and also tracking your BBT, your basal body temperature, which we've talked about in other episodes. But just to give you a bit of a refresher, your BBT is the temperature you take right in the morning before you get up, before you drink water, before you go pee, anything. And what you're looking for is a biphasic temperature shift. So, follicular phase, pre ovulation, will have a very stable temperature, and then you'll see a very distinct rise and then a stable luteal phase. If your luteal phase is shorter than 10 days, more likelihood for a miscarriage and not an optimized time to try to get pregnant because you will risk that. Instead, continue to work on increasing your calories, getting out of that low energy availability. Stress, we've talked about how cortisol and progesterone are conflicting. So, managing your stress levels, so on and so forth, to get your luteal phase at least like 12 to 14 days long. And that will optimize your efforts of getting pregnant and also staying pregnant. So those are some things that I see as well in terms of coming out of HA and when to get pregnant. I would definitely suggest tracking your BBT because there's so much information in it, especially if you want to do it the optimized way and see if you are having anovulatory cycles. Like, is there even a shift? Your period isn't like guarantee that you're going to have a healthy pregnancy. It's just a factor of it. So I think that specifically your luteal phase, just kind of seeing where that lies, is a really good, important information to have before you get into planning your family as well. I'm not sure if you had any issues. I don't think you did with
Mm-mm.
any of your pregnancies. Did you
I
ever
didn't.
did you ever track, or how did you ever know like if you were, yeah, I'm assuming
No.
not, but I'm just
It
asking.
was just no, it's a good question. And thank you for sharing. Like that information is so helpful. I know we've talked about it before, but I remember the first time we talked about it, I was like, "Oh yeah, no, that's so good to know if you're struggling." And it's one of those things because everybody's body's different and all of
Mm,
that. I know for me at the time, it's just like both my husband and I were young and healthy. Like if we went for blood tests, everything all in good ranges and yada yada. But it's one of those things like we actually when we got pregnant with our first, we were like, well, lots of times it takes people a while to get pregnant. We'll just like stop trying to not get pregnant or whatever. And yeah, it was like boom right away. And we were like, that was sooner than we thought. And so that's why I ended up having our first child before I graduated because I was like, oh, well, it'll probably, most people are like, averages, this takes 6 months or whatever.
mhm.
But I also wasn't on birth control long term. I tried it for like a month, I think, and I was like, I hate this, and then I never did took it again. So it's not, for some people, it's like they might have been on birth control for a full 10 to 15 years, and now they're getting off it, and that can play a role in your ability to get pregnant as well. And then if you add in like you said, if you've added in years of eating disorder, your body does need a healing time. But what's super encouraging from all the information you share, Haley, is how quickly people's body like they do heal. Like I love that about the human body. It's like, wow, you could have put it through a ton of crap for years and you can still heal in 8 months. You can still heal within a year, which when you're in the throes of trying to heal might feel, 6 months might feel like a long time. But if you're counteracting 15 years of crap, then that's actually not that long. Although, when we make a decision, we all want it to happen within 2 weeks or, 2 days, but we know that's not reality. And so that's kind of a bit of a digression, but I was thinking of that when you said that. And then when I think about myself, as far as you asking, like, did I have any issues? So no issues getting pregnant and fairly healthy pregnancies. I will say I was very conscious of all of the health things, right? Throughout my pregnancy, I'm like a don't take medications person for years ever, basically. And then the whole like always exercising and, hydrating and the eating and like, so years of that. But if anything, I will say this, by the end of my pregnancies, my platelets were always low. I never went through the throwing up and all of that. So maybe a little bit, but nothing major. I also I'm a chiropractor. I got chiropractic adjustments like every week. And I was like keeping my body fine tuned. But when I look back, I'm like, if anything, by the end of my pregnancies where some of my blood work was starting to get off, I think if I went back, I was maybe still overtraining a little bit during that time and then possibly under eating. Now that, not that I really identified that at the time. But if anything, I would say that could have been a tweak for kind of having the best pregnancy you could have. But I'm very thankful all of the, labor and delivery and babies were healthy. Like I'm so grateful for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that's a great segue into next week's episode. We have a pelvic floor specialist coming on. So I think that's going to be a really good one just to kind of drill down into like pregnancy and how to keep that healthy and stable throughout your pregnancy. But yeah, it sounds like you were fueling enough to your knowledge. I think that is one of the biggest ones, especially for like my clientele coming from like I need to diet. I don't want to get bigger than I need to, where their fear, especially going into pregnancy, is that their body's going to change. Like that's the biggest fear. And like, I don't want to gain more than I need to. And if I gain more than 30 pounds or whatever the suggested pounds that I need to gain, if I go over that, then I have failed in some kind of way. Where I think women for sure need to be a bit more laid back with how it happens too. Because some of it is genetic. I think both my grandma and my mom, they didn't like eat terribly. They still like worked out. Not my grandma, obviously, not in that day and age, but my mom. And they gained like 60 pounds both pregnancies. For my brother and me, my mom gained 60 pounds both times, not even like trying to, right? So I think it does have stuff to do with genetics, and not to like put yourself in some sort of cookie cutter thing and judge yourself, especially with your body going through such like energetically demanding thing, right? Yes. Just don't be as hard on yourself, and it's better to get more fuel in, I would say, than to underfuel. Yes. Like that just steals nutrients from the growing baby and all of this. So it's better to maybe overshoot than to undershoot. Getting enough like fats and carbohydrates in, like key nutrients, like maybe a prenatal vitamin D, omega-3s, iron, choline, all of these things that are going to help the baby grow healthfully. And then to your point of training, I think there's a lot of fear mongering too around like you can't train when you're pregnant, you're going to hurt the baby and blah, blah, blah. And that's such a freaking myth. I'm sure you can speak on this too, but whatever you were doing before is completely okay and way better than just being sedentary. And then you get into gestational diabetes. Like if you're too sedentary and you're just like kind of treating your body like I only need rest. Yes, you need rest, but you also need to move your body and improve your circulation, getting blood to the uterus and things like that. But did you ever like go to a doctor's appointment and them being like, you should stop training?
No, I never had that. No. But I also had my first two pregnancies, I had midwives, which is a different experience. I loved it. I mean, I had my first two babies at home births with midwives. I know, right? I'm so granola crunchy.
You actually are the most granola ever. I love it.
What? This is why I'm
granola girl.
Should be hanging out with the goats on the roof with you.
You so should.
But yeah, so that was a really great experience. And there with training though, specifically like my first pregnancy, man, I was doing like hardcore. I had just come off of competing Team Canada. So let me see. My last world championships was 2009. I had Violet in 2013. So there wasn't that big of a gap. And when I came off of, like, that was my last world championships, but I still trained gymnastics for another year. And then I was doing adult gymnastics classes, and I was doing like hardcore CrossFit back then too. So, I mean, I was still putting up like 150-pound overhead push press like the week before I had her.
Oh,
Yeah. And I was pulling like 2 from my deadlift, like that whole pregnancy.
oh my gosh.
I know. I look back and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you can't, like, if you, and I had birthed a healthy baby, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're fine. When someone's like, oh, should I not lift this 12-pound weight? I'm like, nah, you're fine. Although with my first pregnancy, I remember having some fear, like, should I be doing this? Like, kind of thinking, like overthinking it at times, of being like, nah, it's fine. I feel good. The whole adage of don't start something new. I've been training my body like this for years and years and years before my pregnancy. And to me, I was scaling back at that point. Like, I was lifting more than that before the pregnancy, right? So that's different than it's like, oh, I got pregnant, now I'm going to start CrossFit. I wouldn't recommend that, right? I think that's a different scenario. But then when I look at all of my pregnancies after that, I did scale back for multiple reasons. One, I'm getting older. Not that I'm old, but I mean, like, with each, as the years go by, you've now already had a pregnancy. You're now caring for other children at the same time. They're waking up. You're not sleeping well at night necessarily. So I got to a point where I'm like, I can't train CrossFit this hard and not be sleeping well and trying to breastfeed a baby and be pregnant with another baby. Like, that's way too much on your body. So you got to look at the whole picture, right? Sure, I did that for my first, because again, before that point, I was just taking care of me,
Mm.
And so I think that scaling it to and we've talked about this tons, you got to look at all the different aspects of your life. How many hours are you working? What are your stress levels? Are you sleeping at night? Now let's pick how we're doing your training based on all of those factors so that you can have the healthiest outcome.
Absolutely. Right. And like the cortisol relationship with the HBO axis too, of when you're
Yeah.
overtraining or you're overstressed or you're not thinking about that, total stress load, which we talked about our audit last week, which would be a great thing to do if you are feeling like you're overloaded, if you guys are like trying to get pregnant and stress is getting in the way, it's maybe inflicting on your relationship with food and so on and so forth. The audit is a really, really good thing, because I feel like stress can just overflow into everything else. At least for myself, if I'm too stressed or I'm not paying attention to my overall stress load, then sleep takes a hit. And then my relationship with food is now compromised because I'm not really thinking logically. I'm just in pure survival mode. I like lean towards like overtraining, and my habits become more disordered when my stress load is too high. So I think really taking into consideration like how much pressure you're putting on yourself right now. And I think like type A can be more like do better, try harder. This isn't even enough. Like, you were breastfeeding and pregnant again, and you're trying to keep up with all this, that, the other, taking care of everyone else. And it just kind of overflows and spews out of you don't have any kind of relief or relaxation. Which I think is a really, really big one, especially trying to conceive or get pregnant, because again, that will play into your luteal phase being shorter and things like that. But yeah, if you haven't gone and listened to the audit, I really, really enjoyed that episode, just because I think everyone can relate to that, especially if you are and your partner essentially are trying to get pregnant. But I also wanted to mention it's not just women who need to be on it and fueling properly and, taking care of their stress load. Also, your partner, because your partner is also an aspect in terms of the quality of the egg, the health of the pregnancy, so on and so forth. So I'm curious for you and John, like, were you guys doing the same kind of protocols? Was it more like you, or so on and so forth, when you got pregnant multiple times?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've always felt okay. Before I answer this, is John going to listen to this episode? No,
Whatever.
who cares? I'm kidding.
Who cares?
No, I find it interesting within our relationship. I've definitely been more of the health nut in our relationship, where I'm into it, and I've had years of like on the fitness scene, type of deal. But he not so much. Like, he's never been like a crazy fitness guy, but he's always been healthy. Like, he's always or over time he's become more healthy, I guess, in a way. Partly I know some of it's my influence, some of it's its own like reading, or he's listening to a podcast and this guy says he does this, like it's not all from me. Or even through chiropractic college, there's a lot of health conscious people, like friends you make that you're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Or he started working out with his one of his buddies he was never like a high level athlete, John, but one of his close friends in chiropractic college was. So he just started working out with him and he would just do his buddy's workouts. So he's kind of always been like a tag in type of guy. And he does have his on and off switches, and his threshold, like when I look through the years of like healthy eating in the sense of like diet culture, he has had his hot and colds too, where he's gone like, we've talked about it, like the full carnivore, or like years of eating paleo and then years of being like, screw this, I'm just going to eat whatever I want, So he's definitely had a bit of a roller coaster that way. But overall, when you look at him in like, I don't know, like general health, he's always been active. Like chiropractic is an active job. You're walking up and down the tables, you're moving people around. He gets home, he's cutting the grass, he's, whatever, shoveling the driveway. Like he's never been a sit around lazy guy, right? He's very active. So that's the other thing to look at. It's like, to be like active and healthy, you don't have to be a gym buff, right? Like he's always been up for going out for a walk with me in the evening. Well, not always, sometimes depends on what game is on. It's like, no, this week I was after him because I was like, dude, it's summer, we got to get outside, because it was the home run derby and then it was the all-star game, and then like I'm like, how many games are on this week? But so there's kind of a long answer for kind of a mix. But I think it's a good thing to also realize, it's like, you don't have to be a fitness influencer, you know what I mean, to be just like healthy and active. Like he was clearly healthy. We were clearly both healthy enough. Like I said, he gets his blood test done and all the levels have been good. He did have a phase where his testosterone was a little bit low, right? And then we looked at like, well, why is that? And kind of took measures and lifestyle changes and all of that, right? And recently he just had a blood test done where he had one of his enzymes that elevated a little bit. And we're looking at it and going, oh, okay, well, what does that mean? What have you had going on? What are your stress levels? We're not jumping right to this catastrophic thing. So I think it is good to get yourself checked too, right?
Yes.
Like go get a blood test done, go get different, metrics and say, hey, what's our baseline health? And what are we able to do lifestyle wise to be able to help this? I love that you brought up both from the male and female side of things when you're trying to get pregnant.
Absolutely. I've heard so many stories where couples were trying to get pregnant and the woman was the one getting tested. Everything was fine. Right. And it was like, what's going on? What's going on? I don't know. And then the man got tested and turns out that like sperm quality was in the gutter, and it was more so from that side. So I think it's important, like anything partnership wise, to like do this together too.
Yeah.
So you can kind of optimize that. But just to kind of close us out and give us a summary of what we talked about, main thing coming out of HA and getting your cycles regulated is honestly biggest thing. BBT tracking, I think, is the best tool you can ever use, especially if you're going to try to get pregnant, just to see where you're sitting. Get tested, know where your levels are at, especially like rather than willy-nilly taking a bunch of vitamins just because Jimmy Joe down the street told you to because it worked for him. See if you're even deficient in it. If you're not deficient in it, you don't need to worry about it because you're getting it through your diet. Obviously, whole foods, enough foods, not overtraining, over cardio as well. So many cardio bunnies out there. Please don't overdo it on the cardio. Stress management as well is a massive one. So do an audit. Go listen to the last episode. Did you have any closing thoughts?
I do. I don't want to open a whole can of worms with this, but I just want to bring it into people's awareness. Yes. Sometimes I don't think that we always identify what could be a stressor. So one that came to mind is, let's say you work shift work and you're like on nights and then you got to switch back to days. And there's lots of industries that are like that. And I wonder, I don't want to get too much into it because I haven't specifically looked at how exactly this could affect your health. But I think it just from a circadian rhythm perspective, you might not be thinking to yourself consciously, oh, my job is so stressful. You might love your job. But even something like I have to flip back and forth between night and days could be a stressor on your body. And there's other examples I'm sure you could think of for that. But there are people too that sometimes you got to get a little nitty gritty on how you're looking at what could be affecting your body in a negative or positive way when it comes to your health or your fertility. And that was one that came to mind for me that I'm like, oh, I've always wondered that. I'm like, do people who work shift work where there's that like up all night, does that affect this type of thing? Like, are they having trouble getting pregnant? I don't know. Like, I know my sister works as a maternity ward nurse and she's done years of shift work. And I mean, she had 4 healthy babies. So I'm not saying like there's a causation there, but things to be aware of that might not just be you consciously stressed out. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I relate that back to like my binge eating days where it's like I didn't realize how stressful that was on my body, but it definitely was incredibly stressful. Like I was getting enough food for sure, but it was like massive amount here, little bit there, massive amount here, little bit there, and my body just really didn't like the influx and then decrease. Took that as a stressor that I didn't actually realize because I was just blanket statement, I'm eating enough. But
Yes.
the pattern actually helps as well. And like for shift work, what I'm relating this back to, like you could be sleeping enough. You could like during the day, you could get 8 hours, but your circadian rhythm is still all like wonky donkey because you're up at night and then days are different. And then you're sleeping at night and then you're sleeping during the day. So it can take effect. Obviously, people are different. And I don't think it's like that's the problem.
No.
But it could be an issue for some people.
Yeah, it's just asking yourself all the questions and kind of going through what are you willing to trade off to try to see if you can help yourself with your health, right? And that was even something as simple as I had this conversation with John this morning around our breakfast table is like, hey, you know what? You've been struggling with your sleep. What if you just did something as simple as like skip the 2 p.m. coffee? You know, like that might be it. Like, what's the worst that is going to happen? Oh, you don't drink your afternoon coffee for 3 weeks, and you're like, oh, I'm feeling better, or you're like, no, I don't notice a difference, and I want to drink it, so go ahead. You know, but I think it's the awareness of being willing to kind of test it out, right, and see if you feel better, and then if you're going to get tested, see if it's making a difference for you. And I think that that's an important thing to do.
Absolutely. Great closing thoughts. I love this episode. I love talking about this subject.
So exciting.
Oh my gosh. Well, that concludes us. So until next time, eat more, stress less, lift heavy, and stay in the gray.